Hello, my name is Kendra Samuels, and today on my channel we will be discussing the effects of psychiatric testimony and evaluations on criminal cases. Primarily, should psychiatric testimonies persuade the outcome of a case? Well, the issue with psychiatric testimonies is that because they can be used on both sides of a trial for different reasons, and because some of the conclusions are drawn from inference and not solid knowledge of the situation, the weight at which this evidence should be considered is undeterminable. It is used on defense to lessen the punishment for the defendant, and it's used on prosecution to prove motive or, in general, violent or criminal-like behaviors. So, essentially, the two uses contradict. Whereas, pleading not guilty with the insanity defense is likely to lessen the charges placed on a particular criminal or cause them to be dropped altogether, using psychiatric testimony to give professional insight that proves a particular criminal has characteristics that make him or her likely to commit crime is likely to increase time in prison. Now, what is the difference between the defendants who plead the insanity defense and defendants with psychiatric disorders that make them more likely to commit crimes? And why don't both of these lessen charges if they are both caused by a mental disorder? The difference is that the defendants who plead not guilty with the insanity defense claim that they had no control over their actions at the time of the crime, whereas those who have mental characteristics that make them likely to commit crime never lose their sense of right or wrong in the act of committing a crime. Because of this difference, the charges are not lessened in both cases. How has psychiatric testimony negatively or positively impacted the outcome of a criminal trial for the defendant? Depending on the evidence presented on both sides of the trial, insanity defense is a hit or miss. Though certain criminals may actually suffer from mental disorders, it is a possibility that they were still aware of their actions at the time of the crime. I have looked closely at 3 different criminal cases where the defendant pled to a lesser charge due to their mental state. The results varied. Jodi Arias, 2008. Jodi Arias was 28 when she was arrested for the murder of her former lover, Travis Alexander. In order to avoid death penalty, Jodi pled to murder in the 2nd degree, claiming that her personality disorder made her unaware of her actions during the crime. The evidence presented by Dr. Janine DeMarte proved that Jodi did suffer from borderline personality disorder. However, Jodi was caught destroying evidence to remove herself from the crime, and there were many inconsistencies in her testimony that didn't add up to her not being legally responsible for her actions at the time of the crime. She was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole, though the consideration of her mental illness did relieve her of the death penalty. Ralph Tortorici, 1994. In 1994, 26-year-old Ralph Tortorici went into a lecture hall on the campus of State University of New York with a rifle, taking 37 students hostage. He claimed that he was on a mission from the government, and that if he completed the mission, the government would remove the microchip they had inserted into his penis. Jason McEnany, a student, rushed Tortorici and tried to wrestle the rifle away from him. As he fought with Tortorici, the gun fired and delivered 2 shots to McEnany. McEnany was sent to the hospital, and Ralph Tortorici was sent to a correctional facility to wait for his trial to begin. He suffered from a terrible case of paranoid schizophrenia, and it was evident to all that were around him. He failed his first test of competency to go through with the trial. And the second time, he was found fit to proceed, and his defense attorney pled the insanity defense for him. However, prosecution presented solid evidence of premeditation, so he was sentenced to maximum years by the state of New York on 11 counts of kidnap and 1 count of aggravated assault. Gary Hulsey, Marine veteran, 1978. Gary Hulsey was sent to Vietnam to fight alongside the Marines when he was just 17 years old. When the war was over, he came back to the States to finish college and start a career. and he eventually got married. After only 3 weeks of marriage, he murdered his wife. Halsey suffered from severe post-traumatic stress disorder, and he regularly drank a fifth of whiskey to take his nightmares away. On the night of the murder, he was drinking heavily, and the last thing he remembered was passing out around 10 o'clock. When he woke up, he looked over at his wife and found the combat knife he kept under his pillow stabbed into her chest. He turned himself in to the authorities and he pled insanity defense. He served 9 years in prison with the charge of murder in the second degree. He is now an active member of society and he serves on the city council. In conclusion, psychiatric pleas only reduce sentencing if the criminal was unaware of his or her actions at the time of the crime and they show no signs of premeditation. Psychiatric testimony in court could reduce sentencing to minimum charges or allow them to only spend time in a correctional facility, or it could reap them no benefits at all. Well, that's the verdict. Signing off.